Happy Thursday, everyone, and welcome to a very special edition of Richard Skipper Celebrates. Who or what are you celebrating today? I'm celebrating Dianne Fraser, who has an incredible new CD out celebrating the music of Leslie Bricusse. And Dianne, today it's just you and me.
Okay.
First of all, who or what have you celebrated today? I always ask this question of my guest.
Well, let's see. Uh, I think this interview, I've been very excited and looking forward to being with you, Richard, on this show.
Well, you and me both. Here we go again. No, but it was we were scheduled to do this week before last, and
Yes.
then you were in a hotel room, and some hotel rooms, as I know from experience, don't always have the best Wi-Fi service. So we had a few complications there. You were in New York City because
Yes.
you were going to be appearing at Don't Tell Mama, and it kills me that I was not able to be there because it was on my calendar. I was scheduled to be there. And I want to give a shout out to your phenomenal publicist. And that's Betsy Ann Fiala.
Yes. Love her.
I love her dearly. And I was going to be there. And you and I have another connection. And I think he was in town. And that's Todd Schroeder.
Yes. He's my music director on the album. He produced the album also.
And it kills me that I wasn't able to be there for both of you. And so, first of all, why Leslie Bricusse? I'm a huge Leslie Bricusse fan. I wanted to open with that overture because it's one of my favorite
Yes. I love
overtures.
that. Yeah.
And Leslie Bricusse is in the news again because Wonka is opening
Yes.
tomorrow.
Opening tomorrow. Right.
And,
It's gotten some
and a
good
lot of his
reviews.
music, of course, is being replicated for this film.
Right. Well, when I was a little girl, I was a huge Petula Clark fan. And when I saw that she was starring in a movie with Peter O'Toole, of course, I had to see it. Goodbye, Mr. Chips.
Mhm.
And I fell in love with the movie and the songs. And as a result of that, I think I just did more research about Leslie Bricusse and discovered all the wonderful music that he wrote with so many different collaborators. And I have loved this music all my life. I actually did a cabaret show some years ago, my initial cabaret show, Part-Time Diva, and I sang You and I in the show because I've loved that song forever. So that was really why. It was just, the love of the music. And when I started working with Todd, I had so many song choices. As it turned out, we have 4 mashups on the album, and all of those songs really go together well. But I think part of the impetus was I just couldn't decide what not to do. So
here you are.
that's
We'll get. I want to get to the album in a few moments. One of the fun things that I like to do with my guests, and this will take us down any path. I have 5 mystery cards laid out. So there are
okay.
5 mystery questions. So pull a number 1 through 5, and then we're going to delve into getting to know a little bit more about you, and then we're going to get to the album. So pick a
Okay.
number 1 through 5 to start with.
How about number 4?
And your question is, would you rather be proposed to in private or in front of family and friends? And how did it happen for you?
Definitely in private.
Okay.
And my husband, we were living together at the time, but we went to, I'm trying to remember that it was in Dana Point. It was a hotel in Dana Point. And we went there, I think, for dinner, and it was like drinks and dinner and overlooking the Pacific Ocean. I don't remember the name of the hotel at this moment, but that was when he proposed. And he also asked my parents for my hand at a Chinese restaurant on Fairfax in LA
I
called
love it.
Genghis Cohen, that's still here.
I absolutely love that. One of the things that I always do with my guest is I ask for a photograph of you at 5 years of age. I think you're 5 in this picture. or
Something like that. It was
around
hard to
that.
tell.
You were destined for show business. Let's just put it that. I love this photograph, but I asked for a photograph around this age because to me, I've always thought, and I had a therapist on the show who said that she loved the question because she agreed with the statement that I'm about to make to you. I believe that the 5-year-old self is the purest self. It's before life begins to tell you who you are, who you're not, who you should be, who you should not be. So what can you tell us about this little girl and who she was at 5 years of age?
Well, I always loved to sing. And I think probably at 4 or 5, I wanted to be a Broadway star. That was what I wanted to do. And
No, now, did you live in New York at the time? Or what?
no, I lived in the LA area. I grew up in North Hollywood, California,
So I'm
suburb of
curious to
Los
know,
Angeles.
excuse me for interrupting, but what did you know about Broadway that attracted you at such an early age?
Not much except for cast recordings and movie musicals.
Mhm.
But I just always loved all of that. My sister, who plays the drums, and she's on the album, and has played the live shows. She was listening to rock and roll, and I just never really got into, like, when people say, "Oh, what's your favorite band?" I don't really. It just wasn't music that I gravitated toward,
Mhm.
and I liked old stuff, Frank Sinatra and all of that, um, and I don't know, connected, I guess, with those songs and that type of music at a very early age.
Did you grow up in a musical household? And what I mean, did your parents have a big, huge record collection? Uh, I'm going to I'm going to assume that I'm older than you, but in our house, our stereo was just like our TV. It was a piece of furniture,
Mhm.
and uh, putting on the hi-fi, as we call it, and listening. I did the same thing, listening to cast recordings. Um, did you grow up in that kind of an environment?
My parents always loved music. My dad, he could not sing, he was tone deaf, but he loved big band music. And he always said he wishes he had played the saxophone. But he really loved that type of music, and he passed away a few years ago. But
Right.
he used to go to this restaurant on Friday afternoons where they had a big band, and I sang with them many times because he said, "Oh, Diane's a singer, and can she sing?" And I had a bunch of band charts made. That was so much fun. Um, and my mom actually sang on the radio when she was a little girl, so she was a good singer, but didn't ever pursue it really. But they did love music, and they had a lot of parties and always music playing.
Well, I'm a huge believer in manifestation, and I want to know what moment did it go from being in here to being out there? Did you go to your parents and say, "This is something I want to do"? And if so, did you start, as most children do, with lessons? And what was the first time that you appeared on stage beyond this restaurant where you used to go with your father?
Um, well, I probably, in ballet recitals. I took ballet when I was a little girl. I took voice lessons, piano lessons. I don't honestly remember what the first show was that I did, but in high school, I get solos in the, like, middle school Christmas holiday program, and then did musicals in high school and that kind of thing. And then uh but that probably was, like, maybe a ballet recital when I was a kid.
Now, you also have done a lot of musical theater. I want to mention one show in particular because I am putting together a new show celebrating 60 years of Hello, Dolly. And in my
Uh-huh.
research, I read that you did Dolly.
I
Um,
played Minnie Fay.
you played many cherries and feathers, cherries and feathers.
Yeah, yeah.
So, do you, out of all the roles that you have played, was there a particular one that you gravitated towards the most, and that it was difficult for you to let go of, or let go of you?
Boy, that's a good question. Um, I'm not sure if there's one that I feel that strongly a connection to. I did play Louisa in the Fantastics years ago, and that I loved. And Alona Ritter and She Loves Me, mostly because I love She Loves Me so much. To me, it's a perfect little musical.
Do you remember the first live show that you went to see as a little girl?
I don't remember. I think that there were touring companies came through the LA area.
Mhm.
Um, and I probably didn't go to a Broadway show till La Cage or something, but I remember seeing a production of Flower Drum Song years ago. I can't remember what theater it was, but yeah, I loved live musicals.
In Frank Langella's book, he talks about that moment where you step from the darkness into the light. Do you remember the first time that you stepped from the darkness into the light in front of an audience that was solely focused on you, and what that experience was like for you?
Um, well, I want to say it might have been my first cabaret show, though prior to that, I was singing in some lineup shows and things like that, where you'd sing like one or two songs. But I think probably when I did my cabaret show, because the one nice thing about lineup shows is you're on stage, you're off stage, and other people are singing. But when it's you, it's just you, So this Leslie Bricusse show, I have a male singer because I have a duet on the album. So that, gives me a little time to take a breath. But my first show, I didn't have anything like that. It was just me the whole time. So yeah, it's exciting and the adrenaline is pumping, but it's, a little nerve-wracking too.
Well, you probably have answered my next question, but what is it about cabaret that pulls you in? It's a lot of work, it's a lot of money, it's a lot of everything. But what is it about this particular art form that you love the most?
Well, I think that I would say the storytelling, but also just the personal connection. If a singer has a personal connection and tells you why they're singing the songs and draws you in, I remember it was sort of always on my bucket list to do a cabaret show. And many years ago, when I worked with Stephen Schwartz a couple of times on two of his older shows, and I was working on putting together a commercial production of Working, the revised version of Working. And I was in New York for some meetings, and I decided to go to a cabaret show by myself at the Metropolitan Room. And it was two very accomplished singers, male, female, who had been on Broadway, and they had glorious voices. But by the third song, I was bored because they didn't connect and they didn't interpret the lyrics really. And I didn't even know, like at that point in time, I didn't even know how to articulate it. But I thought, if they can do that, I can do that. And on the plane ride home, I made a list of 37 Stephen Schwartz songs that I was going to sing in a cabaret show. And the show that I actually did evolved, and I think the only one that ended up in the show was The Wizard and I, of his songs. But that got the ball rolling, and I started doing a lot of research, and I went to as many cabaret shows as I could in LA. And what I realized, Andrea Marcovici has become a friend. And when I first would see her show, the thing about Andrea is she tells you why you need to pay attention to this lyric, and she draws you in, and that's the art form. That's what it is. And I just love that, because if you want to just hear music, put on an album, or you can go to a concert, but it's not the same. Like, I just love the intimacy of it. And sadly, in LA, the clubs are just disappearing. It's really,
I know.
yeah.
Well, you put this list of songs together, Did you go to Stephen Schwartz about the idea of doing a show, or
Not at that point, because I didn't really know what I was going to do. And we did various salons like in my house, and the show evolved. Um, and it evolved to the point where at one point For Good was like the last song in the show, but then as it turned out, my husband wrote a lot of parody material, and it became very
that's a good thing
comedic.
to have. That's
Yeah.
wonderful.
So it was more comedic. It was telling my story, which at first I thought, my story's boring, but it became interesting. And so he wrote a lot of parody material, and there wasn't as much in the I think I sang chanson also, because I produced The Baker's Wife years
Mm.
before that. And that's always, like near and dear to me. But yeah, it didn't end up being, it wasn't a Stephen Schwartz show. Maybe that'll be my next show. But but it didn't sort of evolve that way. But he was aware of it.
Well, what were your first steps in terms of putting a show together? How did you begin to put your team together?
For this Leslie Bricusse show?
No, for the first show.
Well, for the first show, I met a musical director, Brad Ellis, who you
I
may
know
know.
Brad. Yes, yes.
And I started working with Brad on, the song choices and all of that. And as I said, it evolved. And at first, when my day job is, I'm a personal manager and I represent film and television writers. And I've been doing this for many years, more years than I care to admit. I started as an agent and then became a manager. And in 07, 08, when the writer's strike hit, I knew that it could go on for a long time. So that's when I started working on the show. And I told my husband I was doing a cabaret show, and he was like, "What? You're doing what?" Like he couldn't quite grasp it. And then he sat in on a session that I had with Brad, and he said, "You know what? You know what you need? You need something that says this, and you need something that says that." And that's how the parody songs came to be in the show.
Now, is your husband in the business, or is this
He's a writer? Yeah,
good.
he's a writer and film and TV writer. But he's very, very funny, and he's also he was good at. Like, I'm not a writer as far as the patter. Like, I would do a dry, rough draft, and he would take the red pen, and then no, cut this, and revise it, which he did also with the Bricus show. He helped me, as did my director, Laura Henry, helped me a lot with the patter. But anyway, so it evolved and it became very funny, and kind of told my story, and it was great. And I did that many times. And then from there, I started doing benefit concerts. I did a lot of concerts for the Actors Fund, lineup shows, and then for a nonprofit, the Help Group. And I did one in October for NAMI, the National Alliance on Mental Illness, which was our first. Brad Ellis was the MD for that one. That was the first live show back since the pandemic. But after I did this first show, which was called Part-Time Diva, I wanted to do a Leslie Bricusse show. That was going to be my follow-up. And Brad at the time wasn't available. He was touring the world with Matthew Morrison. And so I talked to Todd about doing it. And he said, great. And we got together, worked on a lot of the songs. And then I kind of got busy again with all these lineup shows and the day job, and I never came back to it. Then during the pandemic, I thought this would be a good album maybe. And I called Todd and said, what do you think of this as an album? He said, that's a great idea. And we worked on Zoom for more than a year and a half during the pandemic, narrowing the song choices. He wrote all the arrangements. And then we got into the recording studio. And even then I was sort of like, oh, this is a vanity project. Maybe I'll get it done at some point, maybe not. And I really wasn't, for two reasons. I wasn't making it a priority because I just thought, who really wants to hear an album from me? And the other thing was, as long as the project's going on, it's ongoing. And there's something nice about having an ongoing project. And once you do it, it's done. But May 2nd of this year, the writers went on strike. And not my first rodeo. So I knew it could last 5 or 6 months with it, which it did. And at that point, I just said to Todd, let's get it done. He mastered the songs. I had photos taken. I got signed to the blujazz record label, which I was referred to by a wonderful New York singer whom I'm sure you know, Marianne Maringolo, who helped me so much.
Yes,
she really helped me with navigating sort of how to get the album done. And then did the whole CD baby digital release, getting that set up. And then we decided to do the live shows. So that was how that all came to be. And then the album was released on December 1st.
Well, I'm going to show a clip. This is from Mama last week. And then we're going to come back and we're going to pick up. And I want to talk about your collaborative process with Todd, who I love, by the way. So here you are, Two for the Road.
Okay.
This is for Jeff. If you're feeling fancy-free, come wander through the world with me, and any place we chance to be will be our rendezvous. Two for the road, we'll travel down these, collecting precious memories, selecting souvenirs, and living life the way we please. In summertime, the sun will shine. In winter we'll drink summer wine, and every day that you are mine will be a lovely day. As long as love still wears a smile, I know that we'll be two for the road, and that's a long,
Once again, Dianne Fraser.
Wow. I wish I could have been there. That song is one of my favorite songs of his. And on one level, it seems so simple, and yet it's not.
Yeah.
Again, I want to talk about your process. As you did also with Stephen Schwartz, you make a list, first of all the songs that you want to sing or you're thinking of singing. As you're making that list, are you thinking of a through line with the show, or is the first step just to get ideas on paper?
Oh, it's definitely just to get ideas on paper. And to, the list includes, the songs that I connect the most with, and the ones that I feel I would do a good job delivering. So that's how that kind of starts. And it was funny because with the Bricus songs, initially, there's not a lot of really comedic songs in his catalog. And so, and I like to do comedy, and especially my experience with the first show where I got a lot of laughs and did a lot of comedy. And I thought, oh, there's not as much here. But as it turned out, the way we wrote the patter and the stories I told, I got a lot of laughs, not so much for the songs, but the stuff, connected to the songs. So there's always a way to infuse humor, because I always like that. Not just in shows I do, but when I go to see someone's cabaret show, it makes it more fun.
So I'm curious, who saw the list first, your husband or Todd?
I think Todd did. Yeah, because there were way more songs. There were so many songs, and we actually worked through probably the whole list. I don't remember how long it was, but it was probably, 27 or so, something like that. And we worked through a lot of them. And then there were also some more obscure songs, like he wrote something for Cyrano called Roxanne, but we didn't end up doing that. And then there were a lot more like Jekyll and Hyde songs that were on the list. I'm trying to remember what some of the other ones were. Can You Read My Mind? There were just a lot of, I read a big biography about Leslie Bricusse and bought his big songbook too. But it's older now. I mean, it was probably, I don't remember when it was first published, maybe 06 or something. And then there were a lot of songs, but it was funny. There were songs in there that surprised me, like the Sinatra song, My Kind of Girl. That's Leslie Bricusse.
Wow. I never realized that.
Yeah. Yeah. So.
And how much input did Todd have in terms of, let's not do this, let's do that? Or did all of those decisions come from you?
No, not at all. I deferred to him a lot on the choice. I mean, sometimes I would dig in if I felt really strongly about something, but there was one, I mean, we talk about this in the live show. The duet is actually, it's a mashup of Look at That Face from More of the Grease Paint with Something in Your Smile from Dr. Dolittle. And I just felt like the two songs, well, I love both songs. And again, it was sort of Sophie's choice. I don't want to give up either. And I thought, they sort of say a similar thing, like, when you love someone, they're so beautiful to you. That was my interpretation. But Todd didn't really think they went together very well. And I said, well, could you try to figure it out? Because I love them together. And we joke about it, in the show that like I won out because I pushed him to do it. But he did find a way, to put them together in a really nice way. So it was very collaborative, but I would say that in terms of like a lot of musical choices, I would defer to him. I don't remember whose idea it was to do Crazy World with If I Ruled the World. And I may have thought of just because they both have world in them. And I thought, oh, that's a good, but it really is such a nice arrangement. It's a beautiful arrangement that he did of those two songs. And most of the musical choices, though, I'd say were mostly his.
And at what point did your director come into play?
She came in probably in August, so a few months before we were doing the live shows.
So was the show already formulated pretty much before she came in?
No, not really. The songs, obviously, were the songs from the album. And then for the New York show, because it was a little bit short when we did it in LA, we added, Tim Connell was the guest singer in New York. And so in addition to the duet, we added Who Can I Turn To for him, which is arguably, in addition to Feeling Good, probably the most famous Bricus and Newley song. So we added that song. But for the most part, it was the songs from the album. And then I had written a very dry draft of the patter. And so my husband helped with that, probably rewriting the first draft, and then Laura helped with getting it to the finish line, and really, really helped a lot with that. The singer on the album for the duet is Damon Kirsch, and he did the show in LA. But we didn't really think to add a song. We just were doing the album. But as it turned out, a lot of people were like, "Oh my God, we wanted more," you know. So
What was the biggest change for you from doing this in a studio to doing it in front of an audience?
well, I mean, when you do it in the studio, it's like, I don't like that note. Let's re-record, you know.
Yes.
And yeah, I sound a little pitchy, auto tune, you know, whatever. That doesn't happen in a live show. You know, you're you're up there and it's going to go the way it goes. And if you forget things, well, that happens. But yeah, it's much less pressure when you're in a recording studio and you can just do another take.
Well, with LA and with New York, in both instances, you've only done it like one singular night. Am I correct?
Correct. Yeah.
Are you looking to do a run of this, or would you prefer to be on the road and do, if you'll pardon the expression, one night stands around the country?
Well, yeah, I mean, I could do either. The guy from the record label had said he thought he could get me some dates, you know, all over the country. And I think that, you know, it has become a tribute to Leslie Bricusse. And I feel like more people need to know who he was and all the songs he wrote. And so that's why that would be nice to do. But I am thinking about, you know, like there's a couple of venues in Palm Springs, and there are a lot of people that live there now that I know who go to these shows. And there are other venues in LA I could play. So yes, I'm definitely open to both, because I think the show really, it was good. I mean, at first I was like, well, I guess I have to do an album release show because I'm doing an album. But I was thinking, oh, I don't know, how is this going to be a show? But it really became a good one.
Absolutely. This might seem like an odd question to ask you, but you've been an agent and you are currently a manager.
Yes.
What elements, if any, of those two areas of your career have helped to shape you as an entertainer on stage?
I think, well, I will answer that question. I don't know how much it has shaped me as an entertainer, but when I was putting together all the benefits and lineup shows and things like that, definitely my sense of follow-up, because I follow up to a fault, which you have to do.
Yes.
You know, usually the first answer is no. You know, you have to just keep hammering people to get your clients a job or get them read or whatever. So that the follow-up and the organizational skills that I would say I've developed have helped me there. As far as, you know, the entertaining portion of it, it's the only thing I can say is when, you know, you're sort of pitching your clients, you have to be very, you know, you have to connect with the person you're talking to and be persuasive and tenacious and all of that, which I think has also helped with the performing aspect of it.
You just said, you know, that there are no's, although I can't believe anybody would say no to you, Diane. But what keeps you going when those no's do appear?
Well, I just think throughout the years of doing this, it's at the beginning, I think, of my career, I used to get very down, you know, if someone like didn't hire my client or wouldn't read them or wouldn't return my phone call. But it's sort of gotten to the point where sometimes the fun of it is turning the no into a yes,
Mm-hmm.
and just staying in there if you believe in something. And it's actually, it wouldn't be as fun if everything was just falling from the sky, low hanging fruit, so easy. There's something about the challenge of
Well,
growing a career. And
I saw an interview with Liza Minnelli, and Liza said that that persona that you see on stage is a fabricated person that I've created. And when I look at, and I try to think of myself also as that person on the stage, do you go about getting yourself booked, or the business end of this business, the same way that you do with your clients?
well, yeah, I would say the same sort of level of staying on top of it, and especially, getting people to come to the show.
Mm-hmm.
That's always a challenge. And no matter what, like we got very good crowds, for these two shows. And I did some advertising, but the truth is they come because you've asked them to come.
That's
You
right.
personally reached out and said, would you please come to this show? And that's really why people show up. And it's a similar journey when I'm trying to grow a career, get someone a job, sell a script.
What have you learned about yourself from, and I want to talk specifically about the Bricus show. What have you learned about yourself from point A, when you put that song list together, to where you are right now, having this interview with me, and what you've learned about yourself with this process, and where you think your next steps are?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think I've gained a lot of confidence as a performer. That's one thing. And just letting people help, letting people give you their thoughts and their opinions, and, uh, and, some notes you take, some notes you don't. But I think that's a growth process.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing is, it's funny, when I came back to the performing, when I did my cabaret show and then all the lineup shows, I was kind of in the closet. Like, I didn't tell clients or people I worked with, because I thought they'd think it was weird that I was doing that. But now I've had so many people came to these shows, clients, who were like, oh my God, this is so inspiring. This is so exciting. It's so great you doing this. And I look at it that, everybody has something they do on the side. I'm not a golfer. I don't play poker. I'm not a skier. I don't do extreme sports. This is my version of it,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And everyone has to have that. So
Do you think that's going to shift?
in what way?
That this will become your main source, and what you do on the side is the management?
I doubt it, because I've only spent money doing this. I've never made any money.
Welcome to Cabaret, everyone who's watching out there.
Yes. And I need my real job to finance this side hustle, as I call it. But unless something miraculous were to happen, it's, I say it's psychic income. That's why I do it and what I get from it. But
I love that phrase, but where does that come from? The psychic income?
Well, that it's not real income monetarily, but it fills me. Right. But it really fills me with satisfaction and joy. And there's something so exhilarating. Like, whenever I do a show, even if it's a show, I sing one song in the show, I'm high for several days after that. Just the feeling of having done it and being on stage. And there's something very exciting about it. When I remember when, lineup shows that I've done, including the one I just did one in October, I sang a duet with my daughter for good, as a matter of fact, in this benefit we did. but starting from the sound check, when the singers are getting there and they're running their songs with the band, the adrenaline starts pumping, and it's there for many days afterwards. And
Well, I want to ask you, which is more difficult for you, to do the lineup shows, because I've done hundreds of them myself, or going on and having a full hour that is specifically yours?
oh, well, definitely doing my own is harder because the spotlight is on you the whole time. Where with a lineup show, I'm putting it together and I'm kind of the stage manager, the producer, the promoter, whatever. But I'm only on stage to do one song. So it's not the pressure of it's you for an hour. Everyone eyes on you. But there is something very exhilarating about it. And that's the psychic income, is it's something you get from it that's not a paycheck in the traditional sense, but
well, one of the things that I love about having the opportunity to sit down and talk with you, and the CD is incredible.
thank
So
you.
congratulations on that. Is I am very interested in artist, and I call it your body of worth as opposed to your body of work. And I am very interested in the creative process. So I've got some questions that I want to ask specifically about your creative process. First of all, the day of a show.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm talking specifically not about the lineups, your show. What is your process leading up to that moment when your name is announced?
Mm-hmm. Well, I like to warm up the voice earlier in the day and not do too much singing throughout. It's hard not to sometimes because you want to like run the whole show and do that. But usually I like to eat a big bowl of oatmeal at some point in the afternoon because it'll tide me over, because I do not like to eat before I go on stage.
Same here.
But it's sort of, I don't know why, it's just sort of my thing that I always do on a show day. Oatmeal. And then, kind of some stretching and body movement and stuff to get me going. And then I like to do my makeup early, just touch it up later, but just so that if I'm wearing lashes, they go on okay and stuff like that. But I try to stay as relaxed as possible, but it seems like there's always something that is happening that day that needs your attention or is unforeseen. And so that's why, as much as I can get done in advance, know what I'm wearing, what jewelry I'm wearing, am I getting my hair done, all of those kind of things. But I try to stay as relaxed as I can, though sometimes it's difficult because then the sound check comes and that's when I start to get pumped up.
And what is your process for cooling down after the show is over? Do you have a routine that you like to do after a show is over?
We'll probably eat something. That's what I always like to do.
Yeah.
And then just kind of, relax and be with people. And, we all, after the show, Don't Tell Mama, we all went to Joe Allen.
Wow.
And I had a lot of family there. And that was super fun. And just hanging out with everyone,
That's great. I do the same thing. And especially when I go to, even if I'm going to see a show at Don't Tell Mama, Joe Allen's is my place to go.
Yep.
When it comes to your career, have you been deferring any major decisions, or are you the type of person who says, this is what I need to do, and you go right through it?
Yeah, I pretty much, if I decide I'm going to do this, I follow through. I don't know what you mean deferring career.
I'm putting things off. Some people procrastinate. I'm the kind of person, I keep lists. I am a chronic list maker.
Yeah.
And I'm constant, when ideas pop into my head, they go on the list and I try to tick them off as they come up. Some people defer, put things off.
No, I don't put things off. If I want to do something, I will do it. I mean, there's there's a project that I've sort of been working on with a friend of mine. Greg McKellen is his name, and he was the co-founder of a nonprofit theater company in San Francisco called 42nd Street Moon.
I know it very well, and I
you
know
them?
Greg.
I did The Boys from Syracuse there, which he directed. And he now lives in LA. And we've been talking about creating a theater company like 42nd Street Moon. So we actually have a website that's still kind of, as I say, under construction. We have a name for the company, Shadowland Musicals, because in the early days of the movies, LA was called Shadowland. And we had nonprofit status, but because of the pandemic, it's sort of like everything kind of ground to a halt, and we haven't picked it back up. But that is something I would love to get off the ground at some point and do a similar thing. When Greg started the company, they were doing, older gems of musicals that were lesser known.
I've seen it. They are still in operation, aren't they?
They are.
Good.
But they do a lot of contemporary things now. Not as much but we can do both. I mean, there's no restriction. So the challenge is finding the right space in LA and raising the money to do it. So, but that very much is something I'd love to do, because again, it would give opportunity to all these amazing performers in LA that don't have as much of an opportunity to do shows anymore. And there are a lot of great old shows we could do. So I'm hoping at some point, but that's on my list of things to do. And I would like to do more dates with this You and I show. That would be a lot of fun. And then we'll see what the next one is. Maybe I'll do another album. It was fun doing this. So,
well, again, congratulations. Excluding anything that we've talked about today, what do you feel is the most important decision that you've ever made when it comes to your musical career that propelled you forward?
Well, it's funny because I think that the decisions have been more organic. And I think that doing those lineup shows really opened up the world to me in terms of getting to know a lot of great singers who were doing musicals and cabaret shows and things like that. And I think that really was an organic development, because when my daughter was at this school that needed money, and I thought, I could do this. I could just do something in my house. And that really started it, because I didn't realize how great and a feeling I would get from doing it and just working with all these other singers and that kind of thing. And so in a way, I think it was probably that, possibly. But when as I said, when I was researching all these cabaret shows, I realized that, there were like big famous people. Like I loved Megan Hilty's show. I saw Anna Gasteyer's show, and there were, Namie, Sutton Foster, people like that who were fantastic. But then there were a lot of people you would not have heard of who did really great shows. And I thought, I can do this. This is an art form that, for one thing, you don't have to wait to be cast in a show. You just you say, I'm doing this show, and you put it together and book your club, and you do it.
That's wonderful. This show is all about celebrating. So I'm going to ask you a question, and without naming names or a specific situation that would give this away, what do you feel, was there a specific moment in your career, whether it be this, agent, management, anything, excluding strikes, that was a difficult thing to get through? And what got you to the other side?
I have to think about that, because nothing really comes to mind.
That's good.
the one thing I think of, and this relates to my agent manager career, was when I was a partner in a small agency, and some of the bigger places had been pursuing me, CAA, ICM, et cetera. And I had this feeling that even though we were successful, it wasn't the big time. And I needed to go to sort of grad school for agenting. And that was when I made the decision to pursue the job at ICM, and leaving my partners. I had 3 partners, and it was traumatic. It was really a traumatic experience. In the end, it was the right thing, but it was difficult. And it was definitely a period of adjustment after that. One of the 3 of them I had a rapprochement with some years later, but the other 2 would never speak to me again. They were felt so betrayed that I had left. So that's the one thing that comes to mind. There isn't anything.
I'm always curious when things like that happen.
Yeah.
If the shoe was on the other foot, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And they were in the same position that you were in.
Right.
I would hope, because I mean, years ago, I had it's happened to me twice where I was appearing with a entertainer on stage. And when I made the decision to go solo, in both instances, they were furious with me. And it was, the opportunities were not happening where I was until I made the moves to go forward. And it wasn't that I was doing anything deliberately to hurt anyone else, because that's not who you and I are, but that they would be supportive of it.
I think that there is, in those instances, the person who is being left always feels that, well, it's the way you did it. Like, there's no good way to do it. You know, you do everything above board and what you think is in the right way. But if they feel rejected, and that's what it comes down to, is they feel rejected and they're not happy about it. So there really isn't a good way to do it. And I certainly knew that could be the possible outcome, but I still had to do what I had to do. And, you know, it's tough.
I know. We're going to run out of time, but I've got one question that I want to ask you before we wrap up today. And in each area of your career, and I'm going to start with your career as an agent, who would you say was the most important mentor that you had in that department of your career?
Well, actually, one of these ex-partners that I'm talking about, because there were 4 of us, and 2 of us were younger, and the other 2 had been doing this a lot longer. And there was one of them who I really felt like was a mentor in terms of just learning the business and how to do things. So I feel like more than anyone I worked with at ICM or anyone I currently work with, that he was a mentor to me.
And in the management aspect of your career?
Well, in the management aspect, I'm my own mentor, I think, because I had been doing it quite a long time. And as a manager, I feel like I've taught more than I've learned, in a way. I've mentored other people more than anyone has mentored me.
And as a singer?
In some ways, well, one thing, my voice teacher, Christina Saffron, she's in New York, and I just have to plug her because she's been so helpful with me as a singer. But I also think my experiences with working with Stephen Schwartz, he's brilliant, really, really brilliant, and a mensch, really a good person. And I've learned a lot from working with him and just watching the way his career has exploded. And, you know.
Yes. Well, Diane, I could go on for another hour, but I want to be respectful of your time and our viewers. I'm going to give my final word of the day, and then I'm going to turn it over to you. And it could be
Okay.
about anything that we spoke about today, anything that we didn't talk about that you wish we had, or just any final message you want to leave everyone with today. And when you say goodbye, I'm going to end with one of my favorite Leslie Bricusse songs. You are just incredible, and I love the CD, and I'm glad that it's a part. I downloaded it. It's part of my morning mix.
Yay.
So I never know when you're going to pop up, but it's incredible. So congratulations. And to Todd as well. Todd, I love you if you happen to be watching this. And Diane, you're welcome here anytime. I want you to know
Thank
that.
you.
So anytime
Thank
you
you,
feel
Richard.
that you have something to say or promote, reach out to me. I want to thank everyone for being here today, as I do with all of my shows. I end my show with the same message. Go out and do something nice for somebody else without expecting anything in return. Pick up the phone and call someone that you have not spoken to in a long time. Go to your Facebook friends list, and the first thing that pops up, reach out with a phone call. Not an email message, not a text message, not a private inbox message, a phone call. And let that person know the impact that they've made on your life. And by doing so, what you're going to do is you're going to make an impact on their life. Then order 2 copies of Diane's incredible album. And yes, I still refer to them as albums. I love one of the things that Donald Feltham, great interview, by the way, that you did
Thank
with
you.
him a couple of weeks ago. Donald Feltham always says, when you listen to these records, listen to them from start to finish, because that's what the creators intended when they created this. So order 2, keep one for yourself, and send one to the first name, as we mentioned, that you're going to pick up the phone and call. I have a dear friend, Sean Moniger, and Sean says we're all in the same storm, but we're in different size boats. And I always say, I don't care what size boat you're on, as long as you have a skipper by your side. Happy holidays. And Diane, I'm turning it over to you. And like I said, when you finish, just say goodbye, and I will end the show. You have
Okay.
nothing to deal with in terms of having to deal with that. It's all yours. And thank you for
Okay.
being here.
Well, I so appreciate you inviting me on this show, Richard. And as I said, what started out for me as a vanity project has turned into a tribute to Leslie Bricusse. And I will always love his wonderful music. And there's just something so satisfying for me with the responses we've gotten to the shows and the album. And I'm just so excited that we can share it with all of you. So enjoy, and thank you again.